Hello.
Hi, Birdie.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your sweet note with the prayer.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
Got it propped up so I can see it all the time.
Oh, thanks. Good.
Good morning. Flo is trying to get
Morning. Morning.
Did y'all love that service?
Reminds me of a little song from my kindergarten days.
What?
Good
Okay.
morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with smiles on our faces, for this is the way to start a new day.
Well, growing up with the 1928 prayer book, it was very, the language was so similar, and we did morning prayer. We sang the Benigni and Jubilate Deo.
Figure out next week.
We can hear you, Flo.
Can you hear me? I have Amy on one phone. I have Ruben, my computer guru, on the other phone. And finally, I can see you all.
Well,
But
we can't see you, but we can hear you.
okay. Thank you, everybody.
Great.
I evidently I'm in. So
Right.
I'll talk to you later, Ruben. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Okay.
Is your camera maybe pointing up to the ceiling?
I don't want it. I have it covered.
Oh, okay.
So
We'll just go with the flow.
surprise how much mail I get with FLOW Curry.
There's Carrie.
Hey.
Carrie.
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning. Where are you today?
Home, actually. Yeah, we actually went to Georgetown on Friday night and stayed till Saturday, and we did a family bike ride in one of the parks there. So
Oh, how fun.
that was a first. But a lot of fun.
Such an outside girl.
I know, I'm trying.
Hi, Bertie.
There's Gloria.
Hey,
Hi.
Gloria.
Hi, Ellen. Art, Suzanne, Carrie, Flo.
Gloria.
There you go.
So did anybody stay up to watch fireworks anywhere?
On TV.
Well, TV.
They had two great, we were going back and forth. PBS, they did one from Washington, D.C., like they always do. And then I don't remember what the other one was, but it was in New York. It was,
Macy's.
well, it was Macy's, but I don't remember the network.
Channel 3, NBC.
Anyway, they did fireworks from all over Manhattan that they had recorded through the week, except for one they did live, I guess up the Hudson River. I don't remember which one was. Anyway, it gave me a taste of fireworks. I could hear them in the neighborhood.
I could hear them here till almost midnight.
Me too.
We usually
Yes.
have a concert in Boston.
Yes,
Yes, Arthur, Boston Pops.
I missed that one.
I do too.
Was it on?
No, I don't know that it is. I only knew about the one in Washington, D.C. that was a lot of live performances, but not all of them were in D.C. And the same was true in the one in Manhattan. But they did, at the one in Washington, they did some previously recorded, especially when they did the fireworks, they did the William Tell Overture, and like they always do.
Just a little part of it. Yeah, just a little bit of it.
One of the things I enjoyed, I don't know where I saw it previously, but a man who's been in Man of La Mancha was sick, and of course everybody was quarantined.
Oh, Brian Stokes Mitchell.
Yes, and he was when he got the coronavirus, he would go out on his balcony and or open his window and sing every night at 7, the Impossible Dream. And they had him doing it last night in a very empty theater.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Susan.
Glenda.
Hi, Susan.
We were starting the Black Eyed Peas, and I realized it was time for my Sunday school class.
I think I remember us when we lived in Boston attending a 4th of July Boston Pops concert in the Parkway along the Charles River.
Yes.
Oh,
A
Bring
good
people
friend of
out.
mine that grew up there did that.
Oh, yeah. Then they shot off fireworks over the Charles River. Is that right? Do I remember that? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
We were in Boston.
We had
that
to
Fourth of
lucky.
July many years ago,
push
and
the dinosaurs out of the way to get there, but that was a while back.
What, Flo?
I just said we were in Boston on the 4th of July many years ago, back in the 90s, I guess, and we did not attend this, but we, you know, people were just converging on the subway or buses, you know, to get there. It was even the excitement of arriving was something.
Mhm.
Hi, Suze.
Howdy.
Hey,
Hi.
Susan, Bill.
Oh, you're here. Oh, I gotta talk to you, Susan, about trees. We need help with our trees. I bet you have a person.
Oh my gosh, everything I have dies. So I'm not the right person to ask.
We just need a person that will come trim our trees. So any of y'all.
I have a name, Susan. I have a name, and I'll give you later.
Thank you.
That
Thank you
reminds
very much.
me about the steaks at Cheesy's Meat Market. We actually went there and we had those steaks last night. They were really good.
Hey, awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for that recommendation.
You are welcome. We had more this week ourselves, so.
Yeah. Well,
How do you cook them? Are you barbecuing them?
we had ours grilled. Yeah.
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 What was it, Susan? What was the name of it?
Cheesy's, isn't that a horrible name? Cheesy's Meat Market. I thought I had the card. I don't. But they're across from the high school. Where the, right next to Luigi's.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
Well, let's get started on our last session together in this book, An Altar in the World. I have something new I'm going to try to share my screen where I have half the screen is slides and the other half is like everybody's faces. So we'll see how this works today. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Oh no, it was so great a minute ago. I'm gonna
There are
try.
probably too many of us.
Well, I still see 6 of you.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
had
don't.
a second side by side, so I might be able to just kind of play with it a little to see if maybe we can make it bigger. But
I like your screensaver.
oh yeah,
Let's all go to the beach.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
and she just finally walked in the wet sand for the first time.
I know.
That's right.
There we
That
go.
doesn't look like the Gulf.
No,
No.
it doesn't.
No. That is not the way.
That's a little bit better, I guess. Let's see here. See. Uh-oh, I pushed the wrong button. I hope it doesn't ruin my progress. There we go.
Good.
Ah, don't want that. Okay, perfect.
I'm not getting anything different.
Oh,
I
I'm not getting the people.
I get 6 people on the far right and then
oh.
all
I don't even get that. I only get the one person on the right,
We
like
do
we
too.
usually do.
Okay. Well, I'll still keep working with it because I thought it would be nice to kind of be able to see people as we see the slides. So I was trying something new. I probably will just kind of go back and keep thinking about it and see if there's a way we can kind of see everybody, but can you at least see the slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'll stop sharing at some point so we can just kind of have a look at everybody. Okay. So here's our opening prayer that I had for this morning. It's kind of small. Oh, sorry. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Is there anybody that wants to lead us in opening prayer?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in your word, you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, the cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. You know, like I said, I've been using the prayer book more often, and I came across that, and I was like, wow, that's a timely prayer that I just was inspired by. So thank you, Ms. Linda, for leading us in prayer this morning. For our fun icebreaker, I was trying to think, since I've been going on a few road trips lately, does anybody want to share, what was your longest family road trip, or are there any funny road trip stories that you'd like to share?
Back in my childhood, we took road trips every summer. And I remember, I have this memory of on one of them, I think we were going to California from Texas, and my father had on a lightweight, but it was a summer suit. This was in the summer. And we had a flat tire, and he had to change a suit. He had to change the tire in his suit. I'll always remember that. I thought, my gosh, things have certainly changed.
Yeah.
He must have had a reason he didn't always wear a suit, but he must have had a reason to have that on.
Interesting. Anybody else?
When Casey was, I think we figured it out, 11 years old, he and I took a road trip from Temple to Washington, D.C., and then to Williamsburg, and then to Greensboro, and then back home. Just me driving with 11-year-old telling me where to go. So I think that was my longest road trip, besides with my family to California when I was a kid. But it was a great trip.
Wow.
It was.
With the paper maps, and he was your
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, that's right. He had that paper map. Yeah.
I love paper maps.
I do too.
We used to, when I was 3.5, we moved from Lubbock to Houston, but my grandparents and cousins and everybody stayed in Lubbock. So every time we took a road trip, it was to go back to Lubbock to see the grandparents, which normally it was 500 miles from our driveway to my grandparents' driveway. So that should take about 9 hours, but we would manage to stretch that into way more hours than that. But my brother's 6 years older, and my sister is 11 years older. So they would put her in the middle, and my brother and I would be on each side. And one year she hooked a rug all the way to Lubbock. And I don't know, that tool that you use to hook a rug, it was like she could have killed either one of us at any moment. So my brother and I were like plastered up against the window while my sister had the whole middle of the back seat hooking the rug. I remember that. And Mother doing her nails in the car with the windows closed. So we were all probably high on fumes from the fingernail polish.
Oh, I remember those rug things. My aunt used to do those all the time. Those were fun.
She was trying to keep people away from her.
Anyone else?
Well, I remember, and Susan, you've not have been on this because every year we used to go to the opening day of Six Flags. My father owned a newspaper and printing business for a long while. And they'd have press day, Texas press day. And you just went in and got everything you wanted. And my parents would let my sister and I each take a friend. And so we ended up in 2 cars this one time. And Daddy was supposed to lead, and Mother was supposed to follow him or something. Susan, were you on that?
I know I went on those,
Yes.
but I don't remember this story.
Well, we got as far as 13th and Beale Street, which was a block away from our house, and lost each other for the entire trip. My parents were terrible. My father was terrible at directions, and my mother wasn't any better. But I don't know how we caught up to each other in Six Flags. You know, that would have been in the probably early 60s. That wasn't the longest, but it's my most memorable. That's why I can't stand to do the following. You follow me. No, we'll get lost. We'll get separated.
Helen, who was driving your car? I mean, the car you were in.
Mother.
Okay.
And Daddy was driving the other one.
I have a story. I'll try to make it short. When Bob and I lived in Wyoming and Denver, we decided to stop. We had one child at that time, and we would stop at a motel somewhere halfway in between, coming from Wyoming to Temple. And the first time we did that, had a car bed, and the whole night, Amanda just rocked back and forth in that car bed. We did not sleep a wink. So after that, we never planned to stop. And we drove, it was about a 23-hour drive, and Bob drove the whole way. We had a dog at that time, but anyway, he would drive he wouldn't let me drive because he would have to look after the children. And so anyway, I can just remember driving in my parents' street, and you know, we were just, all of us, totally exhausted, but I'm glad we don't have to do those anymore. One time we took a train trip to do that, but it took more than the time that because they would put us off to the side. We're talking back in the early 60s. So anyway, enough.
Well, thank you for those memories that we've shared. So, yeah, I just thought like, oh, this would be an interesting kind of topic to talk about today. So, today we're covering chapters 11 and chapters 12, and we'll start with chapter 11 and the discussion question we have. Chapter 11, the title, The Practice of Being Present to God, and the subtitle is Prayer. So the discussion question we have for today: how essential do you think the practice of prayer is to the life of the Spirit? To the life of the Spirit? Is there room for any alternate prayer life? Taylor lists things such as stewing tomatoes and working in the garden as her alternate prayer practices. Do you have any alternate practices of your own, and what makes them prayer-like for you? So who wants to start us off today?
Well, I know one time when I say alternate prayers, we have a boat in a slip on Lake Belton, and it's just barely fits into the slip. And so every time I drive the boat back from taking Suzanne out in it, I'm praying, Lord, help me get this boat in the slip out the bank to the side of the wharf.
Times we didn't do too well, and our boat shows it.
I can tell, like, yeah, boating would make me say a lot of prayers, and especially so I've had those experiences as well. Anyway.
A similar, go ahead, Bertie, you were saying something.
No, I was just saying boating does make me pray a lot for sure. That's not my
It makes me think, Art Story makes me think of something my father taught me when I was a young child. And we were on a plane trip together, just the two of us. And he taught me, and Susan is going to remember this because I've shared it before, but he taught me, he always said the Lord's Prayer on landing. So I liked that, and I
I do too.
myself, and he would always make the sign of the cross. And so I just did that anytime I would fly. And then I became a flight attendant. I think, I don't know if I've shared this here or not, but I thought I can still say the Lord's Prayer on takeoff and landing, but I probably should not be making the sign of the cross because it might give somebody the wrong idea. Still do that. I mean, there's many times when I think the Lord's Prayer anytime is appropriate, but that's, I guess, sort of an alternate prayer life.
Well, it kind of gets it all.
Right.
Yeah.
I was really kind of comforted to hear her say, or to read, that she has trouble with, you know, I guess, deliberate, scheduled, regular prayer, because I have a problem with that too. It's just, I don't know, I just really have trouble with that. And, you know, the long lists of people that you need to pray for, and all of those things that she talked about. But to then hear her talk about the ways that she does pray, you know, like last night at dinner, we said grace, and I stopped, and Jean said, "What?" And I said, "Well, I remembered somebody earlier. I thought earlier today about somebody that we should pray for at dinner, but now I can't remember who it was." And I thought, well, maybe the fact that I thought we should pray for them is good enough. I don't know. But I was comforted by the fact, I mean, I really admire her. And so if she has trouble with, you know, not serious, but deliberate, scheduled prayer, then I don't feel so bad.
There's hope.
You know, that kind of reminds me of how they say the Spirit intercedes on our behalf, even when we don't know the words or have words to say, that, you know, we have that available to us as well. So thank you for that. Anybody else?
Well, I think that really, don't you think every day that whatever we do, we're in prayer most of the time, maybe subconsciously, but I have found during this time, Amy put the app Daily Prayer on my phone. And so in the morning and at mid and noonday and evening and late evening, it'll pop up and say, it's time to pray. And at first I thought, wait a minute, I don't want to pray right now. But it's been nice to have that, because I do pray those 4 times a day. And the prayers are great. And now we're going through the whole book of Psalms. So I think I'm up to chapter 12 or 15 or whatever of Psalms. But it's been nice. But I really think that most of us, if we really think about it, we are in prayer a lot of times. And she reminded us of that, because there are a lot of times we just do things and it is in prayer and we don't really realize that. But it helps us get through whatever it is, whether it's washing the dishes or taking out the trash, or, you know, subconsciously, I think we are in prayer a lot of times.
When I lived in Liberty, you know, in that little bitty town, the only time we ever heard a helicopter was if it was a life flight coming to get someone. And so I just developed the habit of, when I heard a helicopter, I would say a little prayer. And so since we've moved here, we hear helicopters that are not life flight, and you can tell the difference because they're very large. And at first I was praying, you know, that same prayer, and then I thought, well, those are Army people. They, you know, that's not somebody in danger. I don't need to pray for them. And then it occurred to me that they, they're doing stuff for us, and they are preparing to put their lives on the line for us. And so I continue praying for them because it just felt right.
Well, I don't know if they still do this, but there was a called MAST unit out of Fort Hood, Mobile Army Surgical Transport. And that is actually who flew Stephen and I to Houston, our newborn baby who had the heart problem. And there were probably 15 soldiers on that plane, on that helicopter. So, it could be a surgical transport of some sort. Again, I don't know if they did, but they used to serve a huge Central Texas area.
Hearing that reminds me of when our children were very young and we would be out somewhere and they'd hear a siren, like a fire truck or a police car. And one of them made the comment that it scared them. And John said, well, don't be scared, because that's a sign that somebody's getting help that they need. And I think that is a good time, whenever you hear a siren, to pray for wherever they're headed, and pray for the people helping and the people that need the help.
Are you family or something?
Okay. Oh, the author also brought up the 7 different kinds of prayer that's found in the Catechism in the prayer book. And I know that we discussed the 7 types of prayer in our small groups at one point: adoration, praise, thanksgiving, penitence, oblation, intercession, and petition. And so the author writes that the categories in the prayer book were for sharpening her intention. Does anyone have any specific thoughts on these types of prayers, or are some of these types of prayers easier or more difficult to pray than others?
Well, what she said was that it confused her, and that's where I'm at. That trying to figure out what kind of prayer I'm praying is just, it's business, and I don't need business. I don't need more business. I just want to be able to pray without that having to worry about that kind of stuff.
I know, I read about that, and I thought that was so ridiculous to try to do that. Just pray. Who cares what the name of the prayer is? Just pray.
Well, I appreciated that she said that it confused her too.
And I think there are people that like to have more structure, maybe, and this would help give you a more structured.
On the right side or the left side?
Yeah, I guess I could see that too, but it didn't help me.
I just feel that she got confused by it. It made me feel better.
I always, in the things I've taken about classes or whatever I've taken about prayer, it was like, well, you have a section of your prayer that's adoration, and then you have, but adoration and praise, that could be the same thing. But anyway, you need to cover all your bases when you say a prayer. But that then is very thought-provoking prayer, to try to, okay, now what do I do next? Instead of just praying.
Wasn't there some kind of an acronym y'all learned?
ACTS, it's ACTS, I think: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But the Lord's Prayer covers all of that.
Yeah, yes.
It's good.
I like her pointing out that there's a difference between prayers and praying. That is,
I like that too.
praying is a larger category, and within the category of praying is specific prayers. But it's an old monastic saying, to labor is to pray. So the monks used to consider, besides the prayers that they of the offices, the daily offices, they also had to go out and muck the stables and weed the garden and all that sort of stuff in the monastery grounds. And they considered that to be part of their praying as well, which is a point that she made. But yes, praying all the time is just part of life for a Christian. I remember one of the little ceremonies that I grew up with. Every time the odometer in our family car turned over another 100 miles, my father would sing, "Oh, praise God from whom all blessings flow."
That's awesome. That would be nice. Yeah, you got another 100 miles out of the car. So it's a good point to stop and thank God for it.
That's right.
So, and I had a few questions. You don't have to cover them all or anything, but what do you use to assist you in prayer? Do you have like, she described her little prayer altar where she had icons and she would light candles. Do you use anything to assist you or have any set aside space for prayers and praying? Anybody want to share?
We always start our day on the deck, you know, looking at the trees and over the park. Just makes it easier. But I think the trick is being able to, you know, it's a lot easier when you're in a beautiful place to make that connection with God. But the trick, I think, that I got out of that chapter was being able to make that connection in the grocery store, or when you're, you know, in 5 o'clock traffic, or, you know, just, and the more you practice that, the easier that connection is. I mean, that was something I got from that.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
Well, I do have a prayer. It's not a prayer journal. I pray. I find that I need reminders of who to pray for. If I say to someone's telling me about a problem they have, and I say, "I'll pray for you," I feel like I need to go write that down, or I'll forget, and I'll tell them that I'm praying for them. So I have basically a prayer thing written out.
Yeah, I have a prayer list. I have a prayer list, or I'd never remember.
I pray every day, and it's got a lot of prayers in it for just that people have asked for specific types of prayers, and I've looked up prayers in the prayer book that fit that need, and I've written them in this book. And so I feel that it's important to keep saying those prayers every day, even though they're the same prayers, they're the same format, they're formal prayers, and I don't. So my experience is that my godmother, who I never got to know because she lived in El Paso and I didn't, and I know that she prayed for me every day of her life after I was baptized. And I think that had such a profound effect on my life that I feel, I don't know how it works, that's for sure. And that goes back to this business of how does prayer work. No idea how it works. But I feel that somehow in the way God's cosmos works, it's important for me to pray prayers daily for reasons that I have no idea how it works, but it's important somehow.
Absolutely. That kind of reminded me of the difference between formal prayers versus informal, like when those types of prayers you would say kind of in the grocery store when you see somebody, when you hear a siren. I think we just have to like be open to the experience of just being honest, real, creating a relationship. Just pray, like as people have said before. And sometimes I know myself, sometimes I self-edit a lot. And so it's always like, I don't want to say anything until I have it all worked out. But, you know, sometimes I think God just wants us to be open to the experience and just to start talking, make mistakes, make corrections along the way, and just be open to, you know, this new experience and, you know, reaching out to other people or like interceding on other people's behalf. So great thoughts. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
Bertie, along that line, what you were saying, there's a Bible verse somewhere. I think maybe Paul said it. So it is in the New Testament, but he says, do not worry about using eloquent words. Just even use words for that matter, but I don't know that he says that. But
yeah, definitely. I wrote that one down. That's a big one. I need to look that one up and remind myself of that. Thank you. Okay.
Bertie, I don't think God has spell check or
That's good news to hear for today, for sure. Thank you. So we'll move along to chapter 12. And chapter 12 is the last chapter of the book. It looks like a pretty short chapter. And it's entitled The Practice of Pronouncing Blessings, Benediction. And so our discussion question for chapter 12, is there something or someone in your life you feel might need to be blessed, even if it's something sad or makes you uncomfortable, like the man with the recurring dream about the demon at his door? What is it? What would you say to it if given the chance to bless it? So does anyone want to start us off?
This isn't about a blessing, but I loved her thoughts of how we could bless people. But when I found out I had cancer, there was a teacher at my school that I didn't know all that well. He lived in Taylor, and he went to an Episcopal church, but he just came in my office and said, I'd like to pray over you. And I've never, ever forgotten that. And I had a lot of people praying over me. I had a lot of, but it was, right in the middle of the school day, he just came in and he said it and did it. And it was really special. And I know that blessing people is something that we should all step forward and do.
That's Dr. Franks.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of reminded me of how we have to be okay with being vulnerable sometimes,
Yes.
because you kind of have to step out in faith and say, you know what, I'm going to just go where I feel God's leading me, and kind of walk to someone I may not, know, but I want them to know that, they're on my mind, that if they need anything, I'm here to support, or I have good intentions for them. And then on the other side of that, the other person has to be vulnerable to kind of trust this person and that they have honest and good intentions, like in the experience as well. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything they want to share?
Something I noticed when I came to Salado to teach there, I had come from a really large school in Houston. We had like 3,500 students from like 123 different countries. I mean, it was very diverse, and not a very outwardly Christian culture. As a matter of fact, there was probably more Jewish students there than from any other one people. But when I grew up when someone would sneeze, you would say bless you, and she would. But when I came to Salado, a very Christian environment, even in a public school, when someone would sneeze in the class, the kids didn't say bless you. They would say God bless you. And you could tell that there was more intention behind it than just, a response like salud or whatever. It was there was really some God behind it, some intention. It was neat. It was a really neat experience. That's it.
That does remind me that, I didn't even think about that in reading the chapter, how people say bless you. And definitely, I know I have edited myself to say just bless you and take the God out of it. But I never even thought about that I did that for like the comfort of other people, because I'm like, well, I'm not sure how they might stand on religion or, but definitely that's something to think about. Even those small prayers of like the God bless you. And that's a way to kind of bless people as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Was it in a formation class where we heard, I'd never heard it, about the, how that saying, God bless you, came to be? Who remembers that? It was, Flo, do you remember?
Well, it was because a sneeze was considered a little death. I can't exactly explain. And so, because for a second, the person's not breathing. That's what I recall anyway.
Yes.
And so,
That for a moment, you stop, and so you're sneezing to get it out of you again or something.
Right. And so those around you say, God bless you, thinking it's a little deaf.
yeah, that's what I recall.
That sounds right. I just thought that was interesting. Oh, and I had never known that.
Well, I always thought that the God was the obvious. That if you just said bless you, that who
Right.
would it be that would bless you but God? But she implies that we can bless things like that I could, which that had never, ever occurred to me. I mean, I ask God for blessings on people and stuff, but I don't think of myself.
I like that she said it makes it harder to walk across the yard if you're worried about the grass or the bugs or you see life and everything. It's like, oh my goodness, I have to be more careful about how I treat it. Well, the same, I guess, and with people too, that, once you bless someone, you feel like you got to treat them better.
There's a good thought.
Yeah. Something that's disturbed me a little bit in our culture lately, and this may be a Southern thing, I grew up with my aunts and my teachers and my parents friends and everybody. If I hurt myself or if I was sick or if somebody hurt my feelings or something like that, then part of the comfort that they would offer would be to say, bless your heart. Or if you heard that someone had done something good for someone else, you'd say, oh, well, bless his heart. And somehow or other, that has, I think through TV probably, that's been kind of turned around to where people think when you're saying that it's a snide remark and that you don't really bless them at all. You just, you're trying to say something bad about them. And I just hate that because, when that was so comforting to me, particularly as a child, when maybe somebody that I barely knew, some lady at church, would pat me on the back or on the head and say, well, bless your heart.
And they meant it. They meant it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, this blessing comes to one of my favorite, anyway, is from Compline. And when asking, keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or
weep this night. Yeah.
Give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. And shield the joyous, all for your love's sake. And that shield the joyous has I don't know. I've talked with other people, and someone said, "Oh, well, that's so that they don't sin while they're, joyful." But I think of it as just kind of a kindness, like just let somebody be joyful for a little while. Don't take that away from them. Anyway, that is something important.
It's almost as if, Flo, they're very vulnerable.
Yes.
Joyful, and you want to protect them of that vulnerability.
Well, now, see, I don't think of it as vulnerable. That was evidently what the person was that discussed this was thinking, that they're vulnerable, they might do something bad.
No, I don't mean it that way. I mean it like that you don't want them to get hurt. Like not physically, but just.
Yeah, or the joy, just take
let
it away. Just let them have it for a little while, Lord, is how I interpret it.
Well, I think I'm saying the same thing.
I think you are. I certainly
as well.
Well, I'm only quoting the prayer book.
That's a beautiful prayer.
It is. It truly is.
Some points that I saw in this chapter, the author mentions blessings do not confer holiness. The holiness is already there, embedded in the very givenness of the thing. All life comes from God, and for that reason alone, we may call it blessed, leaving the rest to God. So did anyone have any thoughts or responses along those lines?
I was so impressed by that. The things that you said, like little Hitlers grow up in the same generation with little Bonhoeffers and little Schindlers, and as difficult as it is for me to even think it, much less say it, Hitler deserved blessing as much as Schindler or Bonhoeffer, just because he lived and because God had given him life. And that's something that's really difficult for me, maybe for some of you, to accept and put into practice. A blessing will have more power to transform the blessee, although transformation is not required. There is no impressive logic behind this reasoning. The only logic is that all life comes from God, and for that reason alone, we may call it blessed, leaving the rest to God. And that's the hard part. I want God to do what I tell God to do. I know what's best, and I want God to just handle the situation in the way I want it handled. And for some reason, God does not follow my instructions. I don't know why that is.
I like to say God never takes my advice seriously. This is kind of related to this, but I guess I'm kind of moved to share this about the blessing of things. Barbara Taylor shows a little bit of mischievousness in her description of her house blessing, and she said the favorite room was the bathroom to bless. That was kind of mischievous, but actually there's something serious to that. I've had a lot of friends who have had various serious problems with diabetes, and some have died of it. And so I will make a confession to all here that every time I urinate, I thank God my kidneys are working and bless them.
Absolutely. I can relate to that. My mother has end-stage renal disease, and so she has dialysis she has to go through 3 times a week. And so definitely I can relate to that. And that's a prayer that I definitely have all the time, trying to think about that. Anyone else?
Yeah,
I don't have
I
an
bless
app.
my one kidney every day.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I don't have an app on my cell phone that reminds me to bless my kidneys, but something else reminds me.
Well, we'll never see you come out of the men's room the same way.
Good.
True, true.
I liked when she was talking about all the different things Episcopalians love to bless.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we do. We bless everything.
So we ought to be used to this idea in one way.
I just think it's a really cool way. I don't know if it changes the thing at all, but it sure changes how I look at things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some last final thoughts that I got out of this chapter. Matters to God. That kind of related back to some of the previous chapters about like humanity and things of that sort, the incarnation and how we are God's hands and feet in the world. I think she mentioned something along those lines as well. The most ordinary things are drenched in divine possibility. Pronouncing blessings upon them is the least we can do. To pronounce a blessing on something is to see it from the divine perspective. And the question that I had was, do you have any limitations on blessings? Like who can bless? I know Miss Helen talked about that earlier. She did, about those thoughts of you didn't think to bless things for yourself, but I have those same thoughts when I thought about it. It's like, really, am I allowed to do that? I just thought I asked God to bless things for me. So this kind of changed my mindset as well, this chapter. Or what should be blessed, she talked about blessing a stick that she saw. I never thought about that. Or how things should be blessed. Should there be like a formal way to bless them, or should we just give in to spontaneity and just go from where we feel and where we are? So anyone have any discussion or thoughts along those lines?
I have a Zoom meeting another one I have to go to, so we have to take off.
Okay, well, have a good week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I liked how she went through what is the purpose of that stick? All the different things that it could have been used for. Anyway,
I loved the whole idea of, thinking of it in a different way. But when I first started reading this chapter, I thought, oh, wow, my son, who is a priest, is coming today. And I thought, I never asked Casey to bless me. I just forget. And I thought, I'm going to do that. As soon as he gets here, I'm going to ask for his blessing. And then I read the chapter and I thought, shoot, I can be blessing him.
exactly.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
That's one of the biggest things I miss. And I love morning prayer. Don't get me wrong. I love it though, because that's what I grew up doing. But I miss the blessing at the end.
Yes.
Of the priest.
Yes.
I miss that
I do too.
very
Yeah.
much.
Me too.
Well, on page 204, down there, the last paragraph, that whole paragraph is so good because it says the second piece of wisdom about pronouncing blessings directly related to the first is that the practice requires you to ease up on holding the line between what is bad for you and what is good. Once you get into the blessing business, you give up thinking you're smart enough to always tell the difference between the two. And the rest of that, I won't read it all, but the rest of that, like when you break a bone or when you win the lottery, you live with either of those very long, and you may discover that neither of them is as bad or as good as you first thought it would be. Blessing covers your ignorance and seeds your curiosity all at the same time. So this is what life has brought you. How will this change things? What can you make of it? And it really is, because you have to learn to bless the bad and the good. And sometimes you have to be smart enough to know the difference. And I think the only way that wisdom comes is from God. And the thing about that's, I guess, you know, they say words won't hurt you, but not too long ago, I wrote something and I had some responses for some people on Facebook. And this one man said, well, bless her heart, she doesn't know any better. And you know, that really hurt. And I know there's always a difference of opinion, but I do not say bless your heart anymore unless I mean exactly what I'm saying for good. Because that one statement from that one man written on Facebook really, really hurt because he was being so ugly. And I thought, I'm not going to be ugly to people. I just can't do that. No matter how much that I think their opinion is just so over the top. So I have really stopped using bless your heart for that simple reason.
It's used that way a lot. That's the way I always hear it used.
Well,
One
I
thing
had
with
never heard it used being in a derogatory way, but I'm just very careful now when I use that term because it really got to me. It really did. And I'm very mindful of that now. So, and when I first started reading this, I was like some of you, I never thought about me being able to bless someone. And you know, I like that. And several times this week, I've called 2 or 3 people because I thought of them. And I actually visited with one of them. And that to me was a blessing, that I was blessing them because I actually wanted to get in touch with them and see how they were doing. So to me, that is a blessing. And I really love that. But I love that thing about us being able to give blessings. That's wonderful. Fabulous. I love it.
That is great. I think we can leave it right there on that unless anybody else has anything else to add. Well,
I want to thank you, Birdie.
oh,
Yes.
thank you. I'm glad to have had this opportunity and this good group to kind of learn and grow together. So just some final thoughts to wrap up. And I just had this little sentence, An Altar in the World by Barbara Brown Taylor taught me. And you can kind of think of it, does anybody have any like overarching thing, something that they thought of that they're taking away, what they would give with a recommendation for someone to read this book?
It's just written from such an everyday human experience. Understandable. The last book we did was supposed to be in everyday language. Well, it wasn't. And she is a priest and all, but she's a regular human being, and she made me feel better about my many foibles.
Great.
I wanted to say, if you have not read her book, Leading Church, I heartily recommend it. How many of you have read it?
I know Glenda has.
Beg pardon?
I think Glenda has. She might be gone. I don't know.
Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then reading that before I read this, for some reason gave it even more resonance. I can't exactly explain why, but if we ever get together, I would be happy to share my book, but I would recommend you get your own copy if we can't get together.
Thank
Share
you.
books.
Thank you.
I agree with everything y'all have said. And talk about Helen was saying, it's written in such an understandable way. And what Birdie said about self-editing, it's almost like this thought just occurred to me, trying to narrow it down. It's like, don't overthink it. Just,
Right.
Yes.
you know, any of it, any of your spirituality or your relationship with God, your prayer life, just do it.
Right.
It's going to be okay.
I actually shared the extra copy that I got by mistake from Amazon, gave it to one of my doctors just last week. And when I was there, I told her she asked me what I was doing to get through this. And I said, well, I'm with the class with Birdie. And I have this book, and it's really great, An Altar to the World, and I think I recommend it highly because it's just about everyday life, everyday thoughts. It's written in a language that everybody can understand, and it's not complicated. And so I went back for my infusion on that Thursday, and I gave it to the receptionist and said, please give it to Dr. Anderson. So I haven't heard from her, but I will see her in a month, and I intend to ask her if she's even had a chance to look at it. But I just felt very called to share that with her when I was there. So I love the book. Thank you, Bertie, for all you've done for us. I appreciate
Yes.
Yes.
Such a good
It's
job.
been
I'm
wonderful.
sorry I didn't get to be in all of the discussions, but at least through Ruben's help and Amy, I'm able to be here today.
Great. We're great to have you, Miss Flo. This is definitely a group effort. And so I've learned a lot along the way. And I'm glad that I had a good group of people to help me along the way. And thank you for your patience and the technical difficulties. But I think we did pretty well overall. So
Definitely.
Bertie, you were so, you went so over the top to help us
Right.
read this book as we should and discuss it as we should. And I am so thankful for you, how organized you are and how you were a great teacher.
Ditto that.
And we hope you'll do another book.
oh, I would love to. I have to take a little break. That reminds me, that's the next announcement, that we're not going to have an adult formation class next week, July 12th. We're going to take a week off. And so the formation classes will resume Sunday, July 19th. And the next book is Waking Up White by Debbie Irving.
Yay.
Oh,
Yay.
So I don't know, Miss Perry, do you want to kind of introduce kind of the thought behind the book?
Well, the way I understand it is, I mean, if I'm just going to say it, if we are going to try to understand more about what needs to be done in our lives and in our community with racial reconciliation, and this book was recommended as a way to perhaps understand it better. But in my own thought, I feel like this is something that our church needs to be doing, and we're kind of on the threshold of it, that this is the time. And my feeling, and I'm sure many will agree, that if anything is going to be done, it is going to be left up to the white people to see it through.
yes.
And this is a great book. You know, I think any of us raised in the South, no matter how hard we try to be enlightened and to put prejudice and bias aside, there is still some there. And this book is so good at pointing out where that came from, how it started, how to see it in ourselves. It's a really, really good book.
It really is. I am about half through with it, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great.
I was totally shocked about some of this, you know, I guess they call it systemic, what would we say, prejudice or what? The part
Racism. The word is racism.
probably, that's the official word. Probably the one that shocked me the most was about the GI Bill. And I just didn't realize how, well, anyway, you read it. Help me with it.
Flo, I understand this book is easily obtainable. Is that right?
Well, I just went to, it's, I believe I had to do it on Kindle because they're out of it, and they said at least through Amazon that it would be maybe 2 weeks, and so I just did it on Kindle.
I just looked it
I'll
up
do.
on my phone, and there's a description here of a Kindle edition.
What about the other one? She said she
Yeah, the paperback, it says, it will be in stock on July 17th. So you would get it pretty soon after we started. But anyway, it says my delivery would be here by July 19th. So you couldn't read ahead, but you would have it by the time the class started.
Yeah, and I think probably the first sessions kind of usually when we do the classes kind of give people an opportunity to kind of get the book and kind of set the stage, I guess. So, and I'm supposed to talk with, the sessions will be led by Peter Kisner. And so I'm supposed to have a conversation with him. And so I'll let him know about the delay on the hard or the paperback books. So we can address that in planning. So that's all that I had for today. Does anyone have any announcements or anything to share before we wrap up?
Wow.
Well, I think we should learn about benediction.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Would you like to lead us in the
Yes.
closing prayer?
Yes.
Well, this is a benediction because it's an ending of this time together. I'm going to try to use this as a guidance, but not completely follow it. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Also with you.
Direct us, O Lord, in all our doings with thy most gracious favor, and further us with thy continual help, that in all our works begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name. And Lord, we ask your blessings especially on Birdie, and give you thanksgiving for what she has led us into. By your Holy Spirit, continue to direct us and guide us by things that we have learned and come to think about in these sessions. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
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 Wonderful.
Thank you all so
Thank you.
much. You're gonna have me crying now. I'm trying to keep it together since this is recorded. But this has been a real blessing, and I'm so grateful for everybody. And thank you so much. I'm glad that my efforts kind of mattered. So I really appreciate you all.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we do.
Blessings.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.